Welcome to Power Labor, and thank you for completing this training today. This will cover the workplace sexual racial harassment. This training is being provided by Premier HR Solutions. Let's begin by reviewing the company policy. The company is committed to a work environment in which all individuals are treated with respect and dignity. Each individual has the right to work in a professional atmosphere that promotes equal employment opportunities and prohibits unlawful discriminatory practices, including harassment. Therefore, the company expects that all relationships among persons in the office will be free of bias, prejudice, and harassment. So, why do we have this policy? So, what will we be talking about? Today's training is to educate you regarding harassment in the workplace, how Power Labor's policy apply, avoiding harassment, what you should do if you are aware of a harassment situation, and the company's obligation to handle such complaints. Harassment can be that you experienced, witnessed it, or someone made you aware of being harassed. We will also briefly talk about respect in the workplace, stereotyping, biases, and perception. Why is this important? There are many laws that protect individuals from harassment in the workplace. I'll briefly discuss those laws in the next slide. We'll talk about individuals that are covered, what is harassment, and what actions must be taken if harassment occurs during your employment. This training is to help you understand why we are here today and in completing this training. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, is a government agency responsible for enforcing federal laws that make it illegal to discriminate against a job applicant or an employee. If an individual feels that he or she has been discriminated against, then that individual can file a charge with the EEOC. Basically, an individual is claiming some sort of discrimination and reporting such to the EEOC. It is their responsibility then to investigate and contact the employer regarding the charge. What is the company's responsibility in responding to a charge? The company must respond to the charge, and typically the employer has to provide information regarding why the allegation has either been investigated, concluded, or not investigated at all. There are times an employer may not know harassment took place until the charge is received. This training is to avoid situations like this and that due diligence is taking place and handling all allegations seriously. You should never discount a complaint without thoroughly investigating the allegation, even if the allegation is not substantiated. What do we need to know regarding federal laws? There are federal laws that protect individuals against harassment and discrimination. Title VII prohibits discrimination in employment based on race, color, sex, national origin, and religion. Types of discrimination. What are the various types of discrimination that are included in these federal laws? You'll see those on the slide, which are various in age, disability, harassment, religion, retaliation, sex, and so forth. It is illegal to discriminate against a job applicant or an employee because of the person's race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy, gender identity, and sexual orientation, national origin, age, 40 or older, disability, or genetic information. It is also illegal to discriminate against a person because the person complained about discrimination, that's retaliation, filed a charge of discrimination, or participated in employment discrimination investigation or lawsuit. Retaliation claims are in the rise as you can't retaliate against an employee for either making a charge or filing a complaint with an employer. Some examples may include a candidate is not offered a position because he or she can't work the weekends because of his or her religion. An employee is terminated after making a discrimination complaint indicates that he or she was terminated because the complaint was made. The employer may have terminated that employee due to performance but since the two happen close to one another, the employee may think it was retaliation. That is why documentation regarding an employee's performance is important to have and keep. Documentation can help the employer in defending any claims of harassment or discrimination. Power labor policies. You received a copy of the employee handbook, which contains the three policies, which are sexual harassment, racial harassment, other unlawful discrimination, and or harassment. You were also asked to sign an acknowledgement form indicating you acknowledge receipt of Power Labor's employee handbook and that you understand that it is your continuing responsibility to read and know its contents. I will not read those policies during this training, but if you are unclear or have any questions, please ask your manager. Now let's discuss harassment, what it includes, who is covered, types of offensive conduct, and hostile work environment. Again, it is the company's policy to ensure equal employment opportunity without discrimination or harassment on the basis of race, color, religion, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, age, disability, genetic information, marital status, amnesty or status as a covered veteran, or any other characteristics protected by law. The company prohibits any such discrimination or harassment. Harassment is illegal, and both company and employees, including managers, can be held liable. So, what are some types of harassment? Let's go on to the next slide. Harassment includes slurs or negative stereotyping, threatening, intimidating, or hostile acts, offensive jokes, offensive printed or visual materials, offensive physical actions. Any of the items listed on the slide are not permitted on the employer's premises or circulated in the workplace, on company time, or using company equipment via email, phone, including voice messages, text messages, tweets, blogs, social networking sites, or any other means. So, who is covered? Those that are covered are applicants, employees, vendors, customers, and contractors. Basically, anyone is covered. Most importantly is that you want to demonstrate a good image regarding power labor, and your actions can be seen as a reflection of power labor. What are some inappropriate work behaviors? Those are misuse of power or knowledge, offensive language, including tone, aggressive, abusive, self serving, negative, poor performance, and poor work habits. Please refer to the handbook sections regarding inappropriate behavior and grounds for disciplinary action, including grounds of termination, for more information. Now let's discuss appropriate work behaviors in the workplace. Appropriate work behaviors, what does that mean to be a good employee and coworker? And what are some attributes representing appropriate work behavior? Some examples include punctual, reliable, team player, cooperative, polite, respectful, patient, positive attitude, courteous and friendly, meets deadlines, takes responsibility, and good attendance and punctuality. Harassment is unlawful when enduring the offensive conduct becomes a condition of continued employment or the conduct is severe or pervasive enough to create a work environment that a reasonable person would consider intimidating, hostile, or abusive. Here are other conduct that can be unlawful. An example could be that an employee doesn't get additional work because of their race or gender, or because the employee reported someone or was subject to offensive conduct or comments. What is hostile environment? It is when someone is uncomfortable or scared to be in his or her workspace due to offensive behavior, intimidation, or abuse by a coworker or superior. Examples can include off-color jokes or teasing, comments about body parts or sex life, suggestive pictures, posters, calendars. Let's look at what a workplace bully looks like. You may or may not have encountered someone like this. For those of you who have, do these comments sound familiar? I know some of the things that I've heard is this place would close up without me. I take credit when things go right, and so on. So what are some types of bullying? Indirect work bullying could be anything from unjustified criticism or complaints, deliberately excluding someone from workplace activities, or deliberately denying access to information or other resources. Direct work bullying could include verbal abuse, putting someone down, spreading rumors or innuendos about someone. How do these laws apply to the employment practices? Employment practices includes recruiting, interviewing, hiring, promotion, demotion, job transfers, compensation, training, discipline, benefits administration, and termination and dismissal. For example, maybe an employee, most likely you've heard about the importance of documenting interviews, employee performance, behavior, and discipline. Because such documentation can be key evidence when defending against a claim or litigation brought by a current or former employee, therefore you should have effective documentation. I'll give you some time to read the three statements. Which of the following is considered appropriate documentation? C is the correct answers, as the others could lead to discriminatory actions. Let's talk about some examples of discrimination. You could be that you're not hiring an applicant after they disclosed a medical condition, denying a job even though the employee's disability does not prevent them from performing the required duties with a reasonable accommodation, not providing a reasonable accommodation for a person with disability, treating people with disabilities noticeably different than other employees. Disability discrimination occurs when an employer treats a qualified individual with a disability who is an employer applicant unfavorably because she or he has a disability. These employees are covered under the Americans with Disability Act, and if you run into a situation like this and aren't sure what to do, discuss with your manager or HR. What is sexual harassment? Sexual harassment constitutes discrimination and is illegal under federal, state, and local law. For the purposes of this policy, sexual harassment is defined as an unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature when, for example, A, submission to such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of an individual's employment. B, submission to or rejection of such conduct by an individual is used as a basis for employment decisions affecting such individuals. Or C, such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive working environment. Sexual harassment may include a range of subtle and not so subtle behaviors and may involve individuals of the same or different gender. Another area that falls under sexual harassment is quid pro quo, this for that. You do this for me in exchange for that. Examples may include demanding sexual favors in exchange for a promotion, raise, or grade, disciplining or firing a subordinate who ends a romantic relationship, changing job performance expectations after a subordinate refuses repeated requests for a date. Now let's discuss inclusion in the workplace, which includes respect and diversity. What is respect? Respect can be defined as includes consideration of other people's privacy, physical space and belongings, different viewpoints and philosophy, physical abilities, beliefs, and personalities. What actions may constitute a lack of civility and respect? This could include verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual harassment, or negative behavior. Free of biases, prejudice, and harassment. Policy states that all relationships among persons in the office will be businesslike and free of biases, prejudice, and harassment. Oftentimes, our biases, prejudice, are formed from our perceptions. So you ask yourself, where do our perceptions come from? Typically, this is your past experiences, beliefs, and expectations that determine your perceptions and how you think, react, and behave. That is why each person's perception of reality is different. By changing your beliefs, you can change the way you perceive the others around you. In the next slide, I'll show you how perceptions can be very different. This picture points out the importance of perceptions. When looking at the picture, chances are that some people are seeing this as either a fashionable young woman or an ugly hag. What do you see? The same holds true with assumptions and stereotypes we have embedded. So when you look at harassment prevention training, I've discussed the basics, respect in the workplace, and biases. Diversity is another as they seem to transition from one to the other. What does diversity mean? It's the qualities, life experiences, personalities, education, skills, competencies, and collaboration of the many different type of people who are necessary to propel an organization to success. Think about how many interactions it takes to make an organization run. Think about how diverse your workforce is. The landscape is always changing. Next, we will discuss your obligation of reporting any issues of harassment or discrimination and the company's obligation in handling such allegations of harassment or discrimination. Reporting. Don't be a silent witness. Victims or witnesses are required to report as soon as possible. Let the alleged offender know the behavior is unwelcome. Report it to the manager. The company will investigate promptly. If you feel confident, say something directly to the offending individual. My experience has taught me that sometimes the simplest way to avoid something getting escalated is to tell the other person you want the behavior to stop. For example, someone constantly complimenting you that makes you feel uncomfortable, or someone asking you out. Best thing to do is tell the person that you are not interested and would appreciate them stopping the compliments. Sometimes the behavior stops and sometimes it doesn't. However, you aren't comfortable with it, then report it to someone. Don't be silent. Any employee or member of or visitor to the company who believes that he or she has been subjected to sexual harassment or sexual misconduct should report the incident to your manager. The decision to investigate varies based on what is occurring. Power Labor Handbook has specific information regarding the complaint process. Remember prompt reporting of complaints or concerns so that rapid and constructive action can be taken before relations become strained. Early reporting and intervention have proven to be the most effective method of resolving actual or perceived incidents of harassment or discrimination. This process is what the EEOC will look to if the company has a process for an individual to make a complaint and what the company's obligation is regarding the complaint. Company policy indicates that no one will be subject to, and the company prohibits any form of discipline, reprisal, intimidation, or retaliation for good faith reporting of incidents of harassment of any kind, or pursuing any harassment claim or cooperating in related investigations. False and malicious complaints of harassment, discrimination, or retaliation may be the subject of appropriate disciplinary action up to and including termination. Retaliation against an individual for reporting harassment or discrimination or for participating in an investigation of claim or harassment is a serious violation of this policy, and like harassment or discrimination itself, will be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. Acts of retaliation should be reported immediately and will be promptly investigated and addressed. If you are a manager, your manager responsibilities are to promptly respond to harassment issues. You cannot guarantee confidentiality. You do not have to use a chain of command. Retaliation is prohibited. Documentation is important. Investigate and follow up with the complaint. When investigating, get your ducks in a row and don't delay. Protect the people and the process. Conduct thorough investigation. Make sure to communicate sound, supportable assessments and recommendations. What you should not do is ignore complaints or assume that it doesn't need attention. Prejudge credibility, guarantee confidentiality, minimize the importance, discourage people from coming forward, allow others to gossip or talk about the issue. You should determine disputed facts based on evidence, not subjective credibility. You should not reach a conclusion that isn't based on general characterizations or legalism such as harassment or retaliation. Rather, the conclusion is focused on the behavior, its impact, and what is important regarding the organization's policies and values. You should use sound solution approach instead of judgment or punishment and oriented approach to corrective action. What interaction is most likely to solve the problem and prevent from its reoccurrence? The training has been concluded. If you should have any questions about what you have heard today, or if you have any questions about what is written in the employee handbook, please make sure that you ask your manager. At the next slide, you will see a certification of completion. Please make sure that you complete this and turn this in, indicating that you have completed this training. Thank you, and again, welcome to Power Labor.